How's it going, my friends? I hope you're all doing well. Today, we're diving into a very deep and equally important topic. And let me tell you, while preparing this video, I realized I wish I had learned most of what I'm about to tell you much earlier. But you're lucky to have me, and you're watching this video. Just kidding. Fasten your seatbelts. We're starting. You might not admit it to anyone, but the same questions probably swirl in your head every night as you go to bed. How much longer do I have to work? What would my life look like if I didn't have to go somewhere when I woke up in the morning? What do people who have reached financial freedom know that I don't? Can someone like me really achieve this? You've probably watched videos like this before. You've read the books. You've saved the posts. You understand the concepts. Spend less than you earn, invest the difference, and let compound interest do its thing over time. But the gap between knowing and doing still feels impossibly wide. The savings account isn't growing as fast as it should. The retirement calculator throws numbers at you that feel like a cruel joke, and that vague sense that your time is running out keeps rising, even if you're not exactly sure what you're wasting time for. Here is what I have to say to everyone experiencing that feeling. Financial freedom is not complex. It's not reserved for people with higher incomes, better luck, or some special knowledge that only a few possess. I understand this because I started from zero at 22, and by 25, I reached a comfortable point financially. It wasn't luck, it wasn't an inheritance. I simply understood the right framework early on and applied it systematically and honestly. If I had found someone to explain this framework to me sooner, I would have reached it much faster. Fortunately, you're watching this. You don't need to spend your whole life finding the path. The things I wish someone had told me years ago are right here for you today. First, let's start with the most fundamental thing everyone skips. Truly believing that financial freedom is possible not as an abstract concept, but as something achievable in your specific situation, within a reasonable time frame. This sounds obvious, but it's not. Most people say they want financial freedom while secretly accepting it as a fantasy. They budget for a week, but assume they'll abandon it just like every other budget before. They save for a month, but tell themselves, this isn't for people like me. If you truly believe financial freedom is impossible in your case, you will unconsciously sabotage every strategy you try. You'll quit after a month. You'll convince yourself that the approach doesn't work for people like you, and you'll find evidence everywhere that confirms what you already suspected. This is a game your brain plays on you, and you are stronger than your brain. Remember, you control it, it doesn't control you. Consistency and discipline. So, how do you build this belief when it's not there? You consume the stories of people who have succeeded, not billionaires or tech founders, because their stories often involve too much luck and aren't repeatable. Find the people who started with normal salaries and reached financial freedom in 7 to 10 years. Teachers, nurses, mid-level managers, the people who solved what the majority never could. These stories exist. There are thousands of them. When you immerse yourself in them, something shifts. What once seemed impossible starts to feel like a pattern you can follow. A book a month, a podcast episode, a day, whatever fits your schedule. The goal isn't just information, it's reprogramming what your brain considers normal. After 6 months, the idea of working until 65 starts to sound crazy. The idea of freedom within 10 years starts to feel inevitable. This shift in expectation changes everything that follows. But belief alone isn't enough. You need a why strong enough to survive the hard parts. Financial freedom requires doing uncomfortable things for years before seeing results. Skipping the meal out while your friends order another round. Sticking with your old car while your colleagues buy new ones. Living in a smaller apartment than you can technically afford. Saying no to purchases everyone around you says yes to without thinking. It's easy to make these sacrifices for a week, maybe a month. But this isn't a monthly project. It's a lifestyle change that lasts for years. And the moment it gets hard, you'll want to quit. And it will be hard. There will be a night when you're tired and frustrated. The credit card is right there. The thing you want is right there. And the voice in your head asks, what's the point of all this? When you keep going despite that voice, you'll understand what I mean. In that moment, abstract goals won't save you. What saves you is specificity. Knowing exactly what you're working for and exactly what you're running from. Now, let's understand the real math, because most people are working toward the wrong number. The traditional approach says you need to save 25 times your annual expenses to retire permanently. If you spend $40,000 a year, that's $1 million. If you spend $80,000, that's $2 million. You invest the money, live off the returns, and never work again. This is the FIRE approach. And it works for some, but for most, especially those starting with normal incomes, that number feels so massive it becomes demoralizing. If you earn $50,000 or $60,000, even aggressive saving could take 20 years to reach that goal. By the time you're done, you've spent your best decades working toward a finish line that keeps moving further away. And let me add this. I recommend questioning if total retirement is even what you really want. Research shows that many people who retire early fall into depression months later. Stopping work entirely isn't as great as most people think. Here is what changes everything. Retirement is the wrong goal. The idea of never working again sounds tempting in theory. But in practice, ambitious people who reach early financial freedom are usually the ones who need something to work on. Total retirement makes them miserable. So, if total retirement isn't what you actually want, the math changes dramatically. Instead of saving 25 times your annual expenses, you need a much simpler number. What is your monthly cost of living? Not your current lifestyle, and not the upgraded version you dream of. The real, basic cost of existence. Housing, transport, food, insurance, the actual necessities. For most, this number is much lower than they think. Maybe $3,000 a month, maybe $4,000. Once you know that number, financial freedom turns from a distant fantasy into a concrete goal. Because now the question isn't, how do I save $1 million? The question is, how do I create income streams that cover my basic expenses without requiring a traditional job? That is an entirely different problem, and it can be solved in years, not decades. This is where expenses become your most powerful lever. Lowering your monthly costs isn't just about saving money, it's about making freedom mathematically easier to reach. Every dollar you cut from your basic monthly expenses is a dollar you don't need to generate through income streams. If you can lower your monthly basic expenses from $8,000 to $4,000, you've just cut the difficulty of reaching freedom in half. Housing matters most. For many, housing consumes 30% or more of their budget. If you can eliminate or dramatically reduce this cost, you've removed the biggest obstacle to freedom. House hacking is a strategy that works. Buy a 2-4-unit property, live in one unit, and rent out the others. If you do the math right, your tenants can cover your entire mortgage payment, meaning your housing cost effectively drops to zero. This isn't theoretical. People do this every year. The sacrifice is real. You might live in a less desirable neighborhood. You might deal with tenant issues or spend weekends fixing things. But the math is undeniable. Zero housing costs change everything. If house hacking isn't possible for you, there are other approaches. Moving to a lower-cost area, downsizing, getting a roommate, or temporarily living with family while building income streams. None of these are glamorous. All of them dramatically accelerate the timeline. Transportation follows the same principle. The average new car payment in 2026 exceeds $770. Add insurance, fuel, and maintenance, and transportation easily tops $1,000 a month. Buy a reliable used car for $5,000 to $10,000 cash. Drive it for 3 to 5 years. Sell it for roughly what you paid. You've just freed up $1,000 a month that would have gone to depreciation and payments. Food completes the picture. Meal planning saves hundreds a month. Bulk cooking on weekends eliminates expensive lunches. Cutting back on restaurants and delivery apps keeps more money in your pocket. Individually, these changes don't feel transformative. Combined, they can reduce your monthly expenses by 40 to 60%. Now, here is something most people misunderstand about the next step. Your current job is not the vehicle that will carry you to financial freedom, but it can fund that vehicle. Most people look at their salary, calculate how long it would take to save at that rate, and lose hope. The numbers don't work. Even 20 or 30 years of saving leaves them short. They conclude that financial freedom isn't possible at their income level. What they miss is this: the job isn't supposed to set you free. The job is supposed to buy you time while you build something else. A traditional job trades time for money at a fixed rate. You work 40 hours, you get paid X. You work 60 hours, you still get roughly X. There is a ceiling. No matter how good you are, the upward movement is limited. Financial freedom requires unlimited income that can scale without requiring a disproportionate amount of your time. This doesn't mean quitting your job tomorrow. It means realizing you are in phase 1 while building toward phase 2. Phase 2 is where your earnings depend on the value you create, not the hours you work. This brings us to a critical distinction. There are only 2 types of income, and one of them will never make you free. Type 1. Time for money linear. You do the work, you get paid. When you stop working, the money stops. Most jobs and side hustles like hourly freelancing or food delivery work this way. Type 2. Scalable income. You create something that generates income repeatedly, or you build skills that allow you to be paid for value. Rather than time, the upside is theoretically limitless. Even when you aren't actively working, the income can continue. The math of scalable income is entirely different. If you deliver food for $20 an hour, working 100 extra hours produces $2,000. It's linear and limited. If you build a YouTube channel, a newsletter, a course, or a consulting practice, the first 100 hours might produce nothing. The first 1,000 might produce very little, but then the compounding begins. The 10,000th hour might be producing $10,000 a month without additional work. That is the difference between linear and exponential income. Financial freedom almost always requires some form of exponential income. At this point, you might wonder if this is truly possible for someone without special talents or connections. Let me be clear. Building scalable income requires skills, and skills are entirely learnable. People panic when they hear start a business. They assume it requires an innate talent reserved for entrepreneurs. It doesn't. Generating income outside a traditional job is a skill problem, not a luck problem. Copywriting, marketing, sales, product creation, content creation, automation, design, coding, these are all sets of learnable principles. The people who are good at these things weren't born that way. They learned them, usually through free resources available to anyone with an internet connection. Information is not the bottleneck. Action is the bottleneck. According to my experience, what stops most people comes down to 3 specific problems. 1. The idea problem. I don't know what to sell. This traps people in research mode. The truth, there is no perfect idea. The idea you start with is rarely the one that works, but you have to start something to discover what works. Just like your first car wasn't your dream car, your first business idea won't be your last. 2. The sales problem. How do I get someone to buy? There are only 3 ways to get customers: organic content, paid ads, or direct outreach. That's it. Most lifestyle businesses rely on content because it's free and builds trust over time. You don't need to be the world's leading expert. You just need to be able to help people who are a few steps behind you on the journey. 3. The time problem. I don't have time. This is real but solvable. Financial freedom doesn't require 80 hours a week. It requires consistent, focused time over a long period, even just 1 hour a day. Most people have more discretionary time than they realize. Those hours can become the foundation of your future freedom. There are 2 ways to approach the timeline. Some people front-load the pain. They compress several years of extreme sacrifice into a short, intense period. Cheapest housing, cheapest food, zero entertainment, working every night and weekend. This approach can yield freedom in 3 to 5 years. It's hard, and it's not for everyone. The alternative is a longer, slower path. Freedom in 7 to 10 years in exchange for a bit more comfort in the present. Neither path is wrong. The choice depends on your circumstances. What doesn't work is trying to have it all at once, comfort now and rapid progress to freedom. The math doesn't allow it. You have to give something up, and here is something no one tells you. You will try things that don't work. And that's not failure, that's data. Most people who reach financial freedom tried multiple approaches before finding the one that worked. Every failure taught them something about themselves and the market. If you are paying attention, nothing is wasted. The copywriting you learned for a failed blog helps you write better landing pages for a successful course. A practical truth that separates those who succeed from those who stall. Automation and systems beat motivation every time. Motivation fluctuates. Systems run regardless of how you feel. Automatic transfers to savings. Scheduled content creation blocks in your calendar. Processes that reduce the friction of work. The most successful people I know don't have superhuman discipline. They have systems that make the right behavior the default behavior. Schedule the time. Show up. Work regardless of whether you feel inspired. Over months and years, this consistency compounds into results that seem impossible to people still waiting to feel motivated. Finally, understand that learning never stops. A $20 book containing 10 years of experience is ridiculously underpriced. A $50 course teaching skills that could generate thousands is an investment you can't afford to miss. Make learning a permanent habit. Financial freedom is not complex. Lower your expenses. Build scalable income streams. Develop the skills to scale that income. Stay consistent long enough for compounding to kick in. It's easy to understand, but hard to do because it requires moving in a direction the rest of society doesn't support. You hold on to your old car while others upgrade. You build skills while others rest. If this resonates with you, if you realize the gap between where you are and where you want to be is execution, then know this: everything I've talked about is financial literacy in action. Most people never reach freedom not because they aren't capable, but because no one taught them these principles. The path exists. Thousands have walked it. The only question is whether you will spend the next few years building toward freedom or hoping things will just change on their own. Most people choose hope. Most people stay stuck. You just spent time understanding what actually works. The principles aren't secrets. The path isn't hidden. The only remaining variable is what you do next. Start today, not tomorrow, today. Choose one thing that resonated and apply it before you go to sleep. Then choose another tomorrow. A year from now, you'll look back at this moment as the turning point. Knowledge isn't revolutionary. Action is. Financial freedom achievers aren't special. They are just the ones who started and then kept going. Now it's your turn. Let's go.